What's up, guys? It's Matt here, coming at you with another retro deck profile. Today we're going to continue September 2011, the Tengu Plant format deck profile week, and we're going to look at a deck that's always kind of played second fiddle to Tengu Plant. It's always considered the second best deck of the format in Agents or Master Hyperion. This deck was really benefited heavily from the release of Exceeds with Gachi. Beforehand, the Shine Balls really didn't have much utility, and we were kind of focusing more on other agent monsters. But now that we can focus on Venus and Shine Balls and use those to combo with cards like Birdman, and we can use those cards to drop Hyperion more consistently, the deck really just got an overall big boost, especially being able to use Leviair with Tour Guide to bring back the banish cards that we banish off of Hyperion and Jupiter and things like that. So not only do we have like a stun aspect with our Archlord Kristyas, we have a really cool boss monster with Master Hyperion, and then we have fun combo cards that we can mess with Jupiter, Earth, and Venus and all that. So we have a lot of fun cards that we can play with. So of course, the boss monster of the deck is the 3 Hyperion. We can't search it because we don't play Sanctuary in the Sky. The card is not very good. It is kind of funny if you try and play it, but it just doesn't really work out. It's just better off to not include that card and just try and, hard draw it this way, which is really unfortunate that we do have to hard draw this card, but we can win without it, which is really cool, which is another reason I like this deck. Like, it's not a linear strategy that just revolves around Master Hyperion. We have so many other cards that we can, use to win the game where we don't need this. And we just have other boss monsters and things like that. We have our 3 copies of Earth. Again, this card searches our agent monsters. It's nice to just have the tuner. The fact that this is a tuner is really important. The fact that we can banish it off of like Hyperion or anything like that, and then being able to Leviair for a tuner to make like Armory Arm or something with a Shine Ball, or make a Brionac to clear their board to go for game with all the monsters is really fun. And then access to things like Trish also helps. 3 copies of Venus. This card, it sucks to get Veilor to Maxx. This is the one, like, the real big deal with Maxx. In this format, if you're playing against this deck, I will Veilor the first one as opposed to the second one. In September 2012, you wait for the second Shine Ball, so they're left with just Venus and Shine Ball, because they don't play Birdman. But in this format, you play Birdman, so if you Veilor the first one, so they can't, like, bounce and then make a synchro and then use Venus later. But you just make Venus more dead, and you denied like cards like Dark Mist and things like that in September 12, which isn't really a thing that we have going on here. So 3 copies of Venus, and then I've elected to include the 1 copy of Jupiter. This card beats over Thunder King. It can help manipulate our graveyard for Kristya and things like that. So if we have like too many monsters, we can use that if we don't have our Hyperion to do that. And then yeah, again, it's another card. It's another stun card under Kristya as well, so we don't have to worry about, like, we can put out a big beat stick while we have Kristya, so we can apply pressure and try and win the game before our opponent can get to an out. And then, of course, the 3 necessary Mystic Shine Balls. Shine Balls are just like a necessary evil. That is the downside of the deck, is literally just drawing this card. This card is an absolute brick. There's, like, very little value of it. I draw this card all the time. I'm sure there's plenty of evidence of that on the channel of me just drawing this card in both September 11 and September 12. I'm just really good at drawing Shine Ball. But there are times when you can make use of drawing it, the 3rd Shine Ball. I don't play creature swaps, which is another option that another route that you can go with this list. I've decided to kind of just be a monster-focused deck and kind of trim the fat of the spells and traps. I've elected to include 2 copies of Archlord Kristya as opposed to just the 1. It's kind of hit or miss whether or not you play 1 or 2. I've elected to play 2 just because you want to be able to see it at a time, because, again, this isn't searchable. And 2, you can tribute summon for this card. It doesn't have to be special summon. It's just only special summon if it triggers that effect. But if you do tribute summon for it, and you hit 4 names or whatever after you tribute, and then it goes back to the top of your deck, and you can special it again after you draw it. So it is a difficult card to out. But again, you have to be wary of the fact that you have to put it on top of your deck. And then we do play the aforementioned Tour Guide engine for our Leviairs. Leviair Leviathan Dragon are both really useful cards in this deck. So I just felt like the inclusion. And then the fact that they're darks. This is the only real darks we're going to get for BLS. I tried running Chaos Torture and Tragodia, and I really just didn't like them in this particular era. I liked them more in September. but I just didn't enjoy these in the 2011 as opposed to the 2012 build for those Chaos monsters. Just the BLS here. And then the 2 Birdman, because this typically doesn't count to our darks because it banishes itself. So we have to rely on Torgat as our dark engine for our copy of BLS. This card just came back off the ban list for the first time since GOAT format. So for the first time since GOAT format, we had the full 1 BLS 3 Chaos Sorcerer engine, which is something that I love, and there are a lot of decks that I play that will focus on Chaos Sorcerer. And I have other decks like Chaos Warren and Salvocast that I can get my fix of being able to play a larger Chaos engine. So just the 1 BLS here. And of course the game winning card with BLS is the 1 Eyes. The fact that we can add this back off Kristya is insane. This card again is nuts. It's just to ensure that we always win every battle. 1 copy of Gorz, because we're not really too back row reliant. We play 7 trap cards, which some lists you typically see around 5. And after playing a lot of games, we're like, I think trap cards are actually kind of good in this deck. So we've elected to go with actually playing a few extra trap cards. And the last monsters, I played 2 copies of Maxx and then 1 copy of Herald. I don't like more than 1 because, again, this does help alleviate your shine balls. I was playing 2 in 1 with Valor because I wanted something that I could, that effect negation that I could search off Sangan. And I felt that Herald was a little bit more versatile, also because it's a tuner. Being a tuner and then being a light fairy that, again, 1 contributes to the Kristya count. We can ditch Kristya and then use like a card like Monster Reborn to bring it back as well. But just being able to banish this card to like for a pop for Hyperion, and then being able to, have more than just Earth as an extra Leviair tuner target to be able to go into some unusual synchro monsters or go into like more combo plays is really beneficial. So that's why I decided to go with the Herald. Again, it's a fairy monster as opposed to Valor being a spellcaster. So I do side deck 1 Effect Wither. Again, it's a good card to get off Sangan, so we side deck a couple extra of those cards, but we'll get to that when we get there. The spell lineup is very small, only at least 6 cards. Mind Control, this is the only like non-quote-unquote staple card of the format that I've decided to play. Because we have so many different levels, we do play a rank 4, we play rank 3s, we play rank 2s, and we play a secret monster of every level from 4 all the way to 10, which is pretty wild. So that the fact that we have a lot of different cards that we can synchro or exceed into, it doesn't matter what we end up taking, we're going to be able to do something with it if we have another monster. So that's a good way to get problem cards off the board. The Trinity, of course, Dark Hole, Monster Reborn, and Heavy Storm. And I've decided to just play 2 copies of MST as opposed to 3. You see a lot of builds that will main deck 3 copies of this card, and I just feel that it's a little bit too cloggy against the matchups that it's just not that good against. Again, you have Hyperion, which can blow up back row and can blow up cards and things like that. So we don't necessarily need 4 removal cards when essentially there are 5 trap cards that are going to be in every deck, just about. At least the main ones being the Dustshoot, the 2 Warnings, the Judgment, and the Torrential. And the Dustshoot is essentially just going to be flipped anyways, so you really only have 4 defensive cards. So you don't really need to match that card for card in this list, at least in my opinion. That's just kind of how I feel, especially because you can like use Venus and Tour Guide and other things to bait out those back row, to bait out those warnings, and then you can drop your Hyperion. So I've always felt that having 3 copies of MST might be a little bit overkill until we get to the sideboard and we have to start hitting maybe a couple floodgates or something. Again, the trap cards here, the 1 of Trap Dustshoot, again, extremely, extremely standard. 2 copies of D Prison. It was iffy about if I wanted to just go with 2 D Prison or go with 1 Mirror Force, 1 D Prison. Stardust isn't super relevant in the format, but being able to like banish Grapha I felt was really important. But for this card, you want to like set it again in that matchup at least. You don't want to set it until Grapha's hit the board, if you can help it, and if you're not just trying to stave off losing the game, because you want them to commit the Grapha to the board. Because if they pop it and then attack, it doesn't do you any good. So this card is good to draw when Grapha's on the board. It's good to draw before they put the Grapha on the board, so you can like diminish their fiend count. Even like removing, if they like, attack with like a beige or a silva or something, and then you banish it instead of it hitting the graveyard, and they don't have access to gates or something like that is important for me. It's a good enough and relevant enough interaction. Again, Torrential Tribute, and then the Solemn Brigade. These cards are just absolutely nuts. I've thought about playing Bottomless instead of the Warnings in this deck, but like Black Rose is still relevant enough to where like you don't want to just lose your board to Black Rose. So I felt that the Warnings were just, I don't know, a little bit better, even though that like the stuff that hurts this deck a lot, like Thunder King, it doesn't matter if you Bottomless or Warning it, and then the Bottomless saves you the 2,000 life points. But again, the Black Rose interaction is enough for me to say that Warning is the superior card in this deck, despite the life point, because we're not paying life points to activate any of our effects. So, except for Venus, of course, we have the Venus pay 500, but again, you're only going to do 1,500 total in a game. So, and you're very rarely going to resolve all 3 Solemns. Armory Arm, we're in the extra deck, yeah. 1 Armory Arm, again, Shine Balls, Earth, the Banished Herald. Librarian, I like Librarian in this deck, because we can put this up against plants, or any other, like, Karakuri, any, like, Synchro heavy decks, that we can just draw off their cards, because we're not going to Synchro too often in this deck, unless we just open absolutely nutty, and we're not doing, like, Hyperion things, we're just doing, like, Birdman, Earth, Leviair, just absolute shenanigans that way. And we're maybe going to get 2 at most, like at the absolute maximum. So, but it is a way to dissuade your opponent. And then they can't even go to Catastor to kill it because it's dark. So, speaking of Catastor, the 1 of Catastor, this is the staple 5. 1 Brio, the absolute staple 6. I've opted to not include Orient Dragon. I think Librarians just has a little bit more utility than Orient in this deck. 1 copy of Black Rose, the most staple 7. 1 copy of Ancient Fairy. I've decided to go with Ancient Fairy in this deck. I feel like being able to blow up something like Gates is really, really relevant and a good interaction. So I like this card. And then it's a light so that we can make it under Gozen match, which we do side deck. 1 copy of Stardust and 1 copy of Scrap Dragon. These are the absolute staple 8s. And then Trishula. Again, we can make this really easily with Birdman and Venus because the Shine Balls equal the 6 levels, 2, 4, 6 for each of them. Then you bounce the Venus, and then that's 9. And then a copy of Decisive Armor because this card is absolutely hilarious in the mirror. So if you can just absolutely just steal a game with this card with the last effect, it is pretty comical if you ever resolve it. And for the Exceeds, I've decided to go with 2 copies of Gachi. You don't necessarily need 2 copies of Gachi, but again, Earth and then Shine Ball and then Shine Ball, you can make that. Again, we play Reborn. And just the ability to just like boost yourself up to be bigger than things, especially Thunder King is really important. So if you go Venus Gachi, again, you're 2K. So, and then this is 24. So their turn 1 Thunder King doesn't really hurt you as much when you go first. Going second, a card is very difficult to deal with. I thought about even siding Cyber Dragon to like just force them to chew it up, but I don't know, it just didn't quite feel worth it. That felt like there were other cards that I could have played. The Leviair and Leviathan Dragon here. These are just, again, the staple rank 3s, and then the staple rank 4, I decided to go with Utopia over Roach. Again, it's a light, it's big, it can stall out until you kind of draw what you need to draw, so that's why we've gone with that. Onto the side deck here. I decided to side deck 1 copy of each like staple hand trap. Again, the 3rd copy of Maxx for plants, and then DD Crow as well for that matchup. Being able to hit Spore, Bulb, the Debris Target, Pot of Avarice, along with like staple cards like Monster Reborn, is really good. And then Effect Veiler, again, I like it against like Karakuris and things like that. It's a good, again, searchable off of Sangan kind of card. So that's why I like the 1 Effect Veiler. And then the last monster here, 2 copies of Thunder King. Again, this card is really good against the plant matchup and really good against the mirror. So if we go first, we just put this card in. Heck, if we even go second, we could put this card in, and it's really good. We just like drop Dustshoot and things like that going second, but this card is just really important. But the hand traps are really good going second, and the Thunder Kings are really good going first. So you can kind of flip-flop back and forth based on what you're playing against and what's good. The 3rd space, again, for those cards that we need to hit. cards that are going to get sided in, hit gates. There are a lot of like anti-meta back row decks, or like decks like Gladiator Beasts. We have 2 copies of Leeching the Light. This is pretty staple for the mirror match. We can't side Light Mirror, so we're going to side Leeching the Light. It's really interesting about this card in the side deck. If your deck, if your deck is bigger than, like if your deck can make something bigger than Hyperion, you would side Light Mirror, and if your deck can't make something bigger than Hyperion, you do Leeching the Light, which is always pretty funny. I've always thought that was really funny. It's something I realized is like, why are all these decks that can easily just side Light Mirror and shut the deck down? Siding Leeching the Light is like, even if they could, you only have 1 Catastor, and that's the way you deal with that card. So they still have a giant monster on board, so Leeching the Light's the way to deal with that. 1 copy of Debunk. I wanted to side deck 2, but I just didn't want to take anything else out because I wanted to side deck 2 Gozen matches. Again, this does shut off your access to Gachi, but like if you're playing against a deck that literally like can't play, that can't put extra monsters on the board, this card is far superior than like, oh, I can't make Gachi. It's like, yeah, well, your opponent can't play. So the pros greatly outweigh the cons for me with this card. Again, another Floodgate. 2 copies of Shadow Mirror for Dark Worlds. If you just like chain this to like card destruction or dealings, like it's so good. And then of course 2 copies of Royal Decree for just like chamber matchups, and any deck that would play like 15 plus traps. Again, we only play 7, and we can easily side out pretty much everything, but like maybe keep like Solemn Judgment in as like an Omni Negate, and then just keep these for trap cards. But like because we do pay life for that Venus. It's not like super important, but 1500 is pretty relevant in the chamber matchup. So if you're going to see chamber, and Decree can kind of mitigate that definitely, and it just stops that deck. And again, any deck that like we don't want to deal with War Chariot, so our traps will literally be like Gozen match and Royal Decree, so we can like play around the War Chariot whenever they try and like bestie get into the Gozen match or whatever. So let me know what you guys think of the deck. We're going to keep rolling with the September 2011 deck profiles. Be sure to comment down below any changes you would make. If there's anything you want to see, just let us know, and thanks for watching, guys.